welcome to today's episode of Made for More. I am very excited to welcome a very special guest here this morning. It is Samantha Riley, who I will let her introduce herself to you in just a moment. But she is my business coach. I've been working with her for a couple of months now, and I wanted to introduce you to her because she is a pocket rocker, an absolute strategy queen, and has helped me to really shift from part-time employee into going all in for Made for More. So if you've been following along my journey for a little while, you are going to absolutely love this episode as we lift the hood and have a look at what is going on. So welcome, Sam. I am so excited to have you here today.
I'm super excited to be here too. And we haven't just known each other for a couple of months either, have we? We've actually known each other for a really long time.
Yeah, we have, haven't we? So we met, I guess, in real life. No, not in real life, virtually during when Zoom kind of went off during the early days of COVID, and I started following your page and all of your info, and we got chatting, and there was a photo that popped up on your feed, and I immediately was like, oh, she's definitely been a dancer in the past. And then that very same day, you mentioned something about shaketi, which is a style of ballet that is run, it's an international style. And I was like, oh my goodness, she is a ballet dancer or was a ballet dancer, and reached out to you. And that's how we connected. So on that note, where have you come from, Sam? Tell me a little bit about your background.
Yeah, sure. So I've been in business since I was 20. I had a corporate career for a whole, probably 18 months. I really went all in for 18 months before I decided, not for me. I was so young, and the office that I was working in was, everyone that was in there was like my parents' age, which isn't a problem. But I remember one day looking around there and just thinking, oh my God, no one smiles. And it was like this, I can actually like really literally remember the moment where I thought, you know what? I don't want to be this person that is looking like this in all of these years, because as you know, I'm quite extroverted. I'm a very happy person. And I felt like that maybe if I had stayed that would have been sucked from me. So I decided to start my first business at 20, which was, funnily enough, a dance studio, which I owned for 20 years. Amazing. And, within 12 months of opening that dance studio, also opened a retail store selling dancewear. And over the years, that turned into 3 stores. And that's how I got my start in business.
I think that's amazing. And I think if you think back to the ballet world, being at 20 and doing ballet, you're pretty much an old timer. You're ready for retirement to hang up your boots. So tell me a little bit about, being 20, starting your own dance studio. Obviously, that would have been a little unconventional in terms of, upbringing and what's expected of us, go to school, go to uni, get a job, make a career, repeat, rinse and repeat. So tell me a little bit about how you ended up transitioning from being 19 to being a 20-year-old business owner with your own dance studio.
Yeah, so what's really interesting, and I think I did have a little bit of luck on my side, is, when you're that age, you think that nothing will ever happen to you. Yeah. So, if I fast forward to sort of 2010, where I had a massive life change, I found that a lot harder because I was older and I was like, am I good enough for this? All of the things came in, low confidence and all of that, which is crazy because I had 20 years of business background. When I first went into business, it was like, I can do this. I certainly, had a bit of, I guess there wasn't some nice things that came out of that dance world. Like, you're so young. Who are you to be doing this? You've been a part of that world. It took me quite a while to earn my stripes. And I did. But I think that made me the person that I am today, in that I was just like, well, I could either listen to these people that are the naysayers. And, when I think about those first years in the shop, a lot of our suppliers, agents were people, men in their 50s, 60s, some of them in their 70s. They did not want to deal with a 20-year-old girl, that, I'm very short. I looked extremely young. Like, at that time, I looked like I should be just starting high school. They didn't want to speak to me. They would always say, oh, where's the boss? What, we want to speak to your husband. So I think that beginning made me so certain, like, this is what I want to do, and I'll just deal with it. And I think it was such a really good start.
Yeah. And I think there's nothing quite like being told that you can't to really spur you into action to prove that you can.
Oh, well, you know me and you know exactly what that would have done. I'm like, yeah, you watch me. You just watched me.
Yeah, I'm very similar. Like, tell me I can't. Okay, game on, let's go.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a really interesting story around resilience as well, is we are in this day and age, you know, we are surrounded by people telling us that we can't do things and that we shouldn't and we couldn't and we won't and we're too much and we're, I guess, too opinionated, too bossy, et cetera, et cetera. And I think when you are passionate about something and you're really ready to go all in, it's around having that network of people around you to really help, I guess, you know, boost your confidence. I've been listening to an audiobook called The Secret Code of Success by Noah St. John. I think we've talked about it before, but what he talks about, this is audio, so it's talking, what he talks about is surrounding yourself by these friendly mirrors. So it's around having people that, you know, whilst you may not have the confidence to do it yourself, surround yourself with people that can be like, yes, you can do this, go for it, and have your own real cheer squad around. So tell me about when you were, you know, first starting the dance studio, or even when you transitioned into the bricks and mortar dance apparel, like, did you have people around you to help you into that transition?
So the only person really at that time that was the person that I could go to was actually my very first boss. So my first job was in a McDonald's store, like while I was in high school, and the owner of our store owned 4 stores, and I really looked up to him. And there was you know, my parents, and they won't listen to this, so I'm okay, I'm safe, you know, they're like, you know, they had the mentality of, you know, he's the boss and he's the one that's taking all the money, and you know, those old school thoughts of, you know, not nice things, where I used to go in and think, wow, this guy's amazing. How does he have 4 stores? What does he do? How does he manage all of this? Because, you know, it's such a big business. And I used to go and I used to leave school and I used to go straight to the store, like, and I had an hour before I'd start my shift. And I used to actually like sit on the edge of his table and just go, so tell me, what are you doing there? Like, what's that? What, you know, what's that accounting thing? 'Cause back then it wasn't even computers. It was, you know, they had some big pad. I can't even remember what it was called. And it was all these squares. And I was like, tell me about this. Like, how does it make sense? What do you do? And I used to ask him, you know, someone doesn't show up a shift, like, what's your procedure? And I used to ask all these questions, you know, add that to our training in McDonald's, which is all systems and procedures. You know, he was the person that when I said, I'm thinking about starting a business, what do you think? He took me under his wing and went, I think it's a great idea. Let's talk about some of the challenges you're going to have. And, you know, he certainly wasn't there a lot, but if I really needed something, you know, we would go have a coffee and he would help me out. But really at that time, he was the only person. You know, I came from a family that wasn't entrepreneurial. You know, my ex-husband's family wasn't entrepreneurial. I didn't really have anyone that I could turn to. But I think probably one of the things that was a big game changer for us was a few years into our business. We used to have a rep that came over from Sydney that she was a Block rep, which is one of the suppliers. And, you know, it was my favorite brand in the store. I loved Block, you know, as you would know, as a dancer, it's the thing.
Yeah, it's the thing.
So, yeah. And she used to come over and her and I got along really well. And just one day she just said, Sam, like, you're not reaching the capacity of, you know, what I think that you can reach with this store. Do you mind if I give you some tips? And I went, oh my God, no, let me get my notebook. And she talked me through a couple of things, you know, simple things like getting procedures in place to order our stock every Monday, like at exactly the same time, and, you know, different procedures that we could implement into our store, different ways that we could promote different products. And from that moment, our business literally changed. And it was, you know, there was a lot of things that happened that did make us do what we did, but that was sort of one of those forks in the road where we could have just kept going where we were, which was okay. You know, we were pretty much had bought ourselves a job. We were in the business all the time. We were doing okay. But implementing what she did meant that I was eventually able to step out of that business. We had, you know, 2 shops. I had a dance studio. I was working 3 hours a week that were fully, managed and automated and doing really well. So she was sort of that first person that helped me put that into place. And along the way, I've had so many mentors and coaches. I've done so much education, but yeah, they were the first two people that really helped me to get to where we are now.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And I think you touched on something that early on, both in your McDonald's career and when you had your bricks and mortar place. And if anyone asks me about you, I'm like, oh my gosh, she's so amazing. It's like strategy and it's implementation and it's process and procedure and swipe files. You know how much I love the swipe files. And I think that this is what's really set you apart. And certainly for me is, I've got the passion, I've got the drive, I've got the ambition to grow Made for More. But what I was really lacking is someone to be like, okay, so next steps is what you need to do this. You need this process in place. You need this procedure in place. And having you there to be able to go, okay, well, we do this, here's a swipe file for it. And I'm just doing a swipe action for anyone who's listening. And I think that is, something that's probably you've taken with you right from your McDonald's days. And I think that that's something that's so important when we are starting our own business. And I know that I've got a lot of listeners that are sort of, teetering on the edge of employee to business owner, and even some that are early on in their own business journey, is that you need people around you to learn from. Like, we don't actually need to know everything early on. Even my best friend, actually, she's just started her own business in a baby wear apparel. And I'm like, find people that can help you. Like, you don't need to know all the answers. Like, yeah, sure, Google it, but there's probably a faster way. So I think that's amazing. So that's where you've come from. So tell me what you're doing now.
So now what I do is help people to take the knowledge that they've got from whatever it is that they've done, their degree, their jobs, and really turn that into a profitable online business. So I love this because, coming from a traditional business where I had to put the key in the door and sure, I'd managed to work myself out of the business, but if something happened, it was still up to me to put that key in the door and to make it happen. I almost had my third child in the car park of our shop. It's just it was, I remember at the time thinking, this is not a story I want to be telling people of where my son was born. And I didn't want to be in that position again. So, when I had this massive life change, it was, okay, sitting down, what do I want my life to look like? And at that time it was, I don't ever want to be stuck in a physical place again. I want to be working where I want, when I want. I want to be working the hours that I want to work. I'm happy to work. I don't need to be lying on a beach and having cocktails all day. I actually love what I do, but I want it to be on my terms. I want to get paid more for working more or going all in. I don't want to be like in a job where I'm getting paid the same thing. And the fourth thing was, I wanted to be surrounded by the people that I love to be to work with. And for me, like total business nerd, I could talk underwater with marbles in my mouth for 3 days without taking a breath about business. I just love it. So, I took all these pieces and went, all right, well, what can I do with this? And at the time, so I have had multiple businesses. At the time, I was a personal trainer and I'd studied holistic lifestyle coaching. And I used to run retreats helping people and workshops helping people to, live their best life, healthy, wealthy mindset, all of that kind of thing. And what came out of every retreat without fail was that people weren't happy with their career and they were asking, how can I start a business? I've seen you do this so quickly, because I pivot very quickly. And that's how I wound up here. So, it's been an awesome journey. And that's what I love to help other people do, is because we don't go from A to B in a straight line. We have these, all of these experiences, all of this knowledge, all of these passions and things that have happened in our life. And I think that a lot of people think of, their next part of their business or their work is something new, but it's not. We've got all of this knowledge and experience. How can we bring that with us into whatever the next chapter is? That's certainly my journey. And now I love to help other people to do that for themselves. And I think it's really important that, we do live life on our terms. We're in this amazing time where we've got internet, where we are able to do this thing. And, it's the times of going to work and not seeing our children, or, not being able to go to the gym because we're working crazy hours, or, doing things that we absolutely hate that deplete us. Like, we don't have to do that anymore. So
what's the point?
Let's not.
Yeah.
Let's not.
I can totally understand where you're coming from. I mean, whilst I didn't have any children in car parks, thank goodness, certainly by the time kid number 3 and number 4 came around, it was becoming very, very clear to me that life wasn't exactly set up to do the school run, which is 9 to 5, and also do a working day, which was, school run, which is 9 to 3, and the working day, which is 9 to 5. And I was like, you know what? Like I've got a lot of moving parts in this family, and I need to make sure that I'm actually able to show up for them, because the last thing I want to be doing is they're, in their 20s and 30s and being like, you never around, like you never did anything. And I know certainly that was my experience growing up. I come from a very traditional household. My mum was a scientist, my dad worked in manufacturing, and it was long days, overtime on the weekends, and never got to go on any school excursions, which is just recently my son went to the zoo for a school excursion, which we can do here in SA, which is awesome. But he was like absolutely stoked, because you get a bit of street cred when your parents get to come on these school excursions. And I'm like, this is the exact reason why I'm doing it. Like, do I want to be going to the zoo and watching, making sure 7-year-olds don't fall in a pit somewhere? Not really, but I wanted to spend that extra time with my son so that he can have that for himself. So that was amazing.
Totally.
Oh, it's so good. And I just wanted to touch on something else you said. I was talking about this on one of my Facebook videos recently. I was listening to the radio, and I was sort of doing a bit of a segment on, how many jobs you've had. And I think what we tend to do when we, grow up and get a real job and have families and kind of get into that career cycle is that we wipe our slate clean. So we wipe the past clean. Whereas in actual fact, every single job that we've ever had throughout time, even, I used to be a checkout chick at Bilo many years ago, even all of those experiences actually build towards a unique blueprint for what the experience is that we have right now. And I think, being able to recognize that that is all part of the building blocks and foundations, and you can use that. Like, I'm not working in retail at the moment. Obviously I'm working in a service-based business, but a lot of what I learned back then, I can transfer and transition into what I'm doing right now. So being able to recognize that you are building experience, you do have experience in particular areas, and being able to turn that into an online business, especially right now when we're all online.
Absolutely. And this is something that I didn't realize right at the beginning. Back in, I think it was about 2012, I went on a cruise with another 80 odd entrepreneurs. It was so life-changing for me. And one of the questions that one of them asked, because, we used to catch up at cocktail hour every night, as you do, and talk business. One of the questions he said to me was, what was it in your dance? Like, what was it that you did as a dance teacher that made your studio so successful? Because we were runner-up champion dance school for like 15 years in a row.
That's awesome.
And it really stumped me. It was one of those questions. They're the good questions where you just are like banging your head against the wall. So you're like, why can't I answer this? But when it came, it was massive. And what I realized is that I've got the ability to break things into tiny, tiny pieces and feed them in little tiny ways and then bring it all back together. So what I discovered, or, when I thought back, a lot of dance teachers were teaching things in 16, 32 count lots. And I used to teach things in half counts. So I'd say we'd do this on and this on one, and this on and we would practice these 8 counts until they could do it, like little kids could do it without even thinking. And then we would add on. And I was like, oh my goodness, I hadn't realized that that's the way I teach. And that's not the way other people teach. They would teach a whole sequence. So then I went, that's actually what I do in everything. I break it down into tiny, tiny little pieces. So by asking yourself, what is it that sets me apart? What is it that I've done that has made me successful that other people don't do? And it's usually that thing that you don't realize because it comes so easily to you. It almost frustrates you that other people can't do the same thing, or you think, why can't they do that? That's the thing that makes you unique and special. And that's what you need to thread into what it is you do, and thread into your story, and use that. It's metaphors, it's stories, it's all sort of things that help people to be attracted to you, to understand this is what makes me unique.
I love that. And for anyone who's wondering what we're talking about with the counting is when you are learning ballet or teaching ballet, it's more often than not the music is in counts of 8. So you would have heard on Bring It On, or like any kind of dance show where they go like 5, 6, 7, 8, and then it's 1 and 2. And so Sam's talking about each one, and then and was a different step or a different transition into a movement. Whereas a lot of times teachers will teach, an entire series of movements all strung together. So, and I can definitely attest to that in business, is you're like, oh yeah, you do this thing called a funnel, and you're like, okay. And we actually had a webinar on it a couple of weeks ago, and I remember having the biggest aha moment when you were talking about it, and I was like, oh, I've got those tiny little steps. I just didn't realize that was part of the big picture, and it was very much a penny dropped for me type moment. So when you say that that's your thing, how do people find their thing?
It's definitely going back and thinking, what is it that when I've been in a job that people come to me and ask me, or if I'm in a group and we're doing, some sort of project, what is it that I always get handed to do, or what is it that I take ownership of, and why? Why is it that I do that? Because then you're able to break down what is it that's my zone of genius that people automatically come to me for, or come to you for, because they know that you're going to totally own that. And I think that when you can pick that underlying foundation, it's very easy to see how you use that in everything you do. Because once you're aware of it, you're like, that's why I'm good at this, or that's why I can do XYZ. And it's not just in your business, you'll notice it in all areas of your life. And once you're aware of it, the heavens open up. You're like,
And like, you're aware of it, but it's also your genius zone. So it's not actually hard work. Do you know, it's funny that you say that, because that is exactly how Courageous Conversations came to be born. Is I just kept getting asked all the time, how do I have tough conversations? How do I deal with difficult personalities? And I'm like, oh, you just do this, this, and this. And people are like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I can start packaging this up and talking about it, and how do we put a framework around it, and how does it all happen? And that is exactly what happened with Courageous Conversations. Is it was the things that I was getting sick of getting asked all the time. Like, well, you just do this. I think that's some really great advice. So what types of things do you think people that are, and I mean, I know I've certainly been here, I was in the corporate world for a long time, and you would have heard the saying, the golden handcuffs, where it's, it's good, the going's good, and you've got nothing really to complain about, which is certainly where I was. But I just had this deep desire to be doing more with my life, more with myself. I knew that I was capable of so much more. I wanted to be spending more time with my family, having a bigger impact, that type of thing. So have you got any advice, or even a framework, because I know that you like frameworks, on how someone can transition for dissatisfied to satisfied and owning their own business, or starting their own business even?
Yeah. What you're talking about there is like the bee life. Like, not as in a bee, like a bee with a, with a stinger, but like on I talk about, A, B, C, D, right? D's life of just like, oh my God, I can't handle this. It's that back against the wall moment. It's that back against the wall moment where you're like, something has to change. But B life, that's so dangerous, because things can keep going like they are.
Yeah.
And because it's easy. But I think that, we've had a crazy year, right? 2020 has been a year that I don't think any of us saw coming from a mile away. And I think that one of the things that has come out this year, or I've certainly seen it, is people who have been using, their employment as a security blanket. It's like, oh, I can't leave. I'm getting paid every week. I'm not happy, but I can pay the bills. I know that I'm safe. All of a sudden, maybe thinking, oh, maybe my job isn't as safe as what I thought it was. Yeah. So I think that even if you love your job, and there are a lot of people that love their jobs, there's a lot of people that need to stay employees because they really like that.
Absolutely.
My daughter's one of
everyone.
them. Yep. She definitely loves having a boss telling her what to do, and she's quite open about saying that. But if you're in a position where you do want to have a little bit more freedom, then I suggest now is a really, really good time to start a side hustle. Really good time. Yeah. I'm not in the camp that thinks you should put your back against the wall and just leave. There are a lot of business coaches that say that, if you can't jump all in, it won't happen. I think it is such dangerous advice. I've seen people lose houses. I've seen all sorts of things go wrong. I was chatting to someone last week whose business coach had told her to do that. She left a $75,000 a year job, and now she's getting paid $1,000 a month. Her business coach is like, amazing. I'm like, are you crazy? Like, I don't think that you need to do the full jump. Unless you're set up and and you've done your projections and everything's cool, then that's good. But I think that definitely the first thing to do is think, what is it that I would love to be doing? What is it that I would jump out of bed to do every day and that would keep me passionate forever? All right. And I call it the keep principle, because that we do want to stay passionate. So there's 4 areas. Number 1 is your knowledge. So brainstorm all the jobs that you've had, the degrees you've got. This is all the logical stuff. This is all the stuff that goes on your resume. So, and that's where most people start and finish this. How do I start a new business? But when you go further, this is where the magic happens. So the second one is expertise. And that's what we were talking about earlier. Like, what are those things that even the other people in your office that had the same job couldn't do what you did? What's that little extra little bit?
Yeah.
The second E in keep is experience. God, I had a mental blank there for a minute. Experience. So what is it that has happened in your life that gives you empathy in what it is you do? So this is outside of your work. Like, maybe you've had an illness, or maybe you've come through a divorce, or lost a large amount of weight, or you went from 0 to 6 kids in 6 years, or whatever. I know, right? But there's people that have done
Who
that.
would do something so silly,
right? But they're like super mums. They've got a lot to teach the rest of us, right? So what is that experience that you've had that can be infused in? And then the fourth piece is passion. And passions can be used in different ways. So passion can be used in, this is what I really love to do, and this is who I want to work with. It could be in that niche that you want to work, or that industry. It could be that you want to work in a different industry, but only work with those people that have the same passion. You could use those passions in your visual branding or in your branding, or you could use your passions in your metaphors or your teaching. I use my dance, my passion of dance a lot in the metaphors that I use. I talk about backstage, I talk about front stage, I talk about, all of the things that I talk about, I relate back to dance because I know it so intimately, and it is something I'm passionate about. Yeah. So once you've got your knowledge, your experience, your expertise, experience, and passions, you've got them all on a piece of paper, then you start to sort of circle how they could work together. And you sort of, it's a little bit like Jenga. It's like, let's pull that bit out and let's put that bit in, and let's see how they all fit together until you come up with something that feels really amazing, and you look at it and go, oh my goodness, that's it. That's what I want to be doing. That will keep me getting out of bed every single day. And that's something I want to keep doing for a really long time.
I love that. And, I love a good model. So that's the keep model. So it's like the knowledge, the expertise, the experience, and the passion. And I think sometimes with passion, it's this tricky thing that we get stuck on, that we need to know, that it's going to, set our soul on fire immediately. But I find with people that I talk to, passion is very much a slow burn, or they don't realize what it is. And sometimes even, if you're passionate around not-for-profit work or working for charities, sometimes your business can actually then have a greater impact on those types of passion areas as well. And I love that. And I love the knowledge and packing up, the logical part. This is probably where I ended up starting my business. Is I was updating my resume for work. I was on mat leave, and I was updating my resume, and I was like, work experience, and I was just like, oh gosh, there's been no change. There's been no change since I've started having children. And I'm like, what am I doing with my life? And I was, very much like, I'm sure you've talked to a lot of people that have made the transition. I was like pretty disappointed with myself, and I was crying. And my husband, my beautiful husband, was like, oh, this isn't the end of your story. You can keep going. And I was like, he's right. He's 100% right. Of course I can keep going. If you don't like it, just change it.
It's just another chapter.
The next day I did. So it is very much one of those things that you're not, even though we feel stuck, we're actually not stuck. It's all a matter of choice. I had something I was going to ask you, and now I've forgotten what it was. It'll come back to me. So what do you think is one of the biggest problems that we need to be overcoming to actually get started?
To get started. I know that sounds so silly, but I see so many people afraid to make that first step because they don't have clarity So I hear that a lot. I don't have clarity. I don't know what to do. But here's the thing about clarity. It doesn't come first. It's like the action that comes first that gives the clarity. So, for some people, it's a mindset thing. For some people, it's, I don't know what to do. So for some people, it's a strategy thing. And it's not the same in everyone. And we fluctuate between mindset and strategy at different times. Sometimes we're like, we're not feeling good about ourselves, or, recently I had some branding images done, and I've put on a little bit of weight recently, and I had this thing in my head like, oh my goodness, I can't get my images done because I've put some weight on. And then I'm like, oh, hang on, Sam. No one has ever asked you on a sales call how much you weigh. There's this stuff that goes on in our head. And if they did,
then they're not for you, right?
Well, yeah. please don't reach out and prove me wrong.
But
it's still a little bit of a sore spot.
Aside, your new photos are absolutely amazing. They're so beautiful.
Thank you.
They are banging. They're good.
Thank you. And and so sometimes it's this mind virus, as you call it, that gets in the way. And then at other times we've totally got it. We're totally confident, we're like, I'm doing this, but we don't know what the next thing is. We don't know what that gap is in our funnel. So sometimes it's mindset, and sometimes it's strategy. And you need to understand that you will fluctuate between the two.
Yeah.
But if you don't get going, you don't know who to ask for help.
Yes, 100%. I'm a huge believer in like momentum to motivation. So when I'm talking to people and they're like, I don't know what to do next, I Grant Cardone it. You've heard of Grant Cardone, where he 10Xs. I'm like, just 10X it. Just like go hard, do everything, do all the things, like, like housework, when you get onto a bit of a cleaning spree and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is actually not too bad. I'm a huge fan of that as well. So just like go all in, do all of the things, and like the momentum will build the motivation to get you and spur you and keep you going in the right direction. And something you just said earlier around clarity. So I know that you talk a lot around overwhelm comes before clarity. And I think that is something so true when we're feeling completely overwhelmed. And who isn't in this day and age when we've got stuff, social media coming at us, and work-life balance and all the other things, and trying to manage a family in the middle of a pandemic when we haven't ever had to do that before.
Exactly.
And I think you are bang on when you're like, when I am now feeling overwhelmed, I'm like, oh, goody, clarity's on its way.
Because we all get overwhelmed. And I think that a lot of people get stuck focusing on the overwhelm, and where focus goes, energy goes. So with thinking, oh my God, I don't know what to do, instead is, and I coach myself, and I actually make myself laugh now, where I go, oh my God, I'm so overwhelmed. And then I say to myself, okay, so what is it that you need to do next, Sam? And I actually laugh out loud, like, oh my goodness, seriously, because it's just a bit, you've got to move the focus and ask yourself, well, what do I need to do now? And so it's whatever your version of the question is, what is a better question to give you the outcome that you want right now that you're not asking yourself? And asking yourself that question, because your subconscious knows. It knows what the answer to that question is. It might know that. It might not know the how, but it knows the right question to ask. And once you know the right question, like, well, who do I need to speak to, or who's done this before me, or, where do I need to go to find that answer, or, what do I need to research to find out if that's the right strategy, or whatever the question is. At least then you're moving on, you're creating the next bit of action. So then you can go and do whatever it is that you need to do to be able to get it done. But we all go through overwhelm, Richard Branson, Tony Robbins, all the people that we look up to because they're amazing. They all have overwhelm. There's times where they don't know what to do next. Someone on the weekend said, well, when Richard Branson was born, did he know how to run an airline? Did he know how to run all these multiple companies? No, he just did the next thing. And that's all any of us can do.
Yeah. And I think that's so true, is we only see the highlight reel. So we only see the Richard Bransons of the world when they are, internationally known. You don't actually hear much about where they first start up until it, gets written in some kind of memoir. And even then it's still only the highlight reel as well. So I think, what you're saying there around, ask better questions and you get better answers is certainly true. So before we wrap up for today, which has been awesome, what would be your top 3 tips for people that are like teetering on the edge of leaving work or starting a side hustle, or a bit of both? What's your top 3?
Top 3. Number 1 is, what do you want your life to look like? Sounds so counterintuitive. It's got nothing to do with business. But until you know what you want your life to look like, feel like, you can't create a business that supports that. And I think a lot of people make the mistake of starting a business first I know I certainly did, start a business first and then create, you know, this animal that maybe have you working 2 hours that you don't want to be working, or not earning the income that you want for the life that you want to be living. So you need to get really, really clear on what you want your life to look like. That's number one. Number two would be to definitely surround yourself with the right people, the people that are talking the talk, walking the walk, people that are, you know, like-minded like you, but also who are those people that are above you that have achieved it. So there's lots of different people. And I just really quickly just want to veer off a little bit to the side for 2 seconds. You talked before about surrounding yourself with the people that are going to be the cheerleaders. I'm very much of the belief that you need the cheerleaders and also the people that are going to push your buttons.
Ooh, that's good.
Because you need the people that are going to call BS on you as well. Because if I had people that were just going, oh my God, Sam, you're doing amazing all the time, I wouldn't be where I am now, because there's not people that have said, you know, you can't do that, or maybe that's not a good idea, or who are you to be doing that, or, you know, is that the best you can do? You actually need those people as well, you know, or the accountability partners that say, you said you were going to do that and you've just made excuses all week and you've just pushed papers around. Like, why haven't you done it? I call it shuffling papers. It's just,
I know,
you know,
we're on
doing
Zoom,
BS stuff, you know. So it's really important to have all these different people in your life. You know, one of my friends pushed my buttons a lot a few years ago, and you know, to the point where I was just like, I can't handle being around her anymore. Now she's my absolute best friend. She always was, but I've realized that I'm where I am because of some of the things she said to me. Like, she was really calling me out on my BS, you know. And we caught up last week and she said, you know, you're the most resilient person I've ever met. The amount of times I thought, oh no, Sam's out. She's given up. She's not going to do it. And she went, and you just kept getting up over and over and over. And every time I'm like, again? She's gone up again? But, you know, if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be where I am now. So we need those people that are going to push our buttons. So number two, surrounding yourself with the right people. And number three, what would number three be? God, actually just getting out and doing it. It's actually doing it. I don't know why it took so long for that to come out of my head, but it's actually, what can you do today? So it's not, we don't need to launch a $10 million business tomorrow. What we need to do is just make the next decision, take the next step. That's all we need to do. And if you only put in, you know, make a 1% decision today, but you did a 1% decision or a 1% action every single day for a year, where would you be? And I think that a lot of times we think, oh, you know, I'm not there, I'm not doing what that person's doing, and we'll hold ourselves back. You know, I've heard people say before, you know, I don't want to run a webinar. I say, oh, why not? Well, what happens if no one comes? Well, if you don't run the webinar, no one's going to come, right? But what if you get one person and that one person decides to buy your thing? That's one more client you've got than yesterday. So it's, you know, just taking those action steps, starting at the beginning, and understand that you have to crawl before you can run, and then that's okay, and that those building blocks that you're putting in while you are crawling are what's going to help you to make decisions down the track. It is what's going to help you to take your business to where it's got to go, and that, you know, you will get there. You know, 10 years ago, I made a decision that I wanted to live by the beach. Did I live by the beach 10 years ago? No, I moved there this year. It took 10 years of making decisions and living. Every time I moved to a new house, it was getting one step closer, one step closer, one step closer. And because I knew that that's 100% what I wanted to do, the decisions that I made daily in my business were so that I could end up in my dream house by the beach. So, you know, if you would have asked me 10 years ago, would it be worth making those decisions to live at the beach in 10 years? I'd be like 100%. But people get caught up and think, oh, I've got to do it tomorrow. You don't. You don't.
I love that. Someone years ago said to me, don't compare your beginning with someone else's middle. And it's always stuck with me that you never, you know, like when they talk about overnight successes taking 10 years to become an overnight success, we only hear about it when it's worth talking about, or when it, you know, when it's being publicized. And by then you get pretty comfortable with it. It's these early stages where you just got to go. You just got to do it, do the thing. So you've got something to help people if they are looking for more information about transitioning from you tell me?
Absolutely. Well, I've got a free cheat sheet to transition from being employee to empowered entrepreneur.
Ooh,
So
love
it's the
it.
5 tips to position yourself as the standout expert in your niche, so
Mm-hmm.
that you've got the credibility to attract the clients that you want to work with. And in there, I also share the 3 biggest mistakes that people make that have them from failing or just surviving to
Oh, yes.
thriving. And you know, we've had a crazy year, but there's there's a lot of businesses that certainly have felt the pinch, but there's still the same amount of money in the world. It's just a wealth redistribution event. There are a lot of businesses that are thriving now, and there's a lot of opportunity. So to get a copy of that that freebie, you just go to samanthariley.global/made-for-more. samanthariley.global/made-for-more and grab a copy of the cheat sheet.
Beautiful. And we'll put that link into the show notes as well. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, Sam. It's been awesome talking all things business with you. And as I mentioned, I love it. I love how you are very detailed in your expertise and around helping people build their business. It's been awesome.
Thank you. I'm really, really loved hanging out with you here today.